first thing that I want to look at is to make sure that all of us have the TestNav 8 available for students to be able to have quick, easy access to the iStep resources. And so it's also easy for them to access it in your classroom if you're using it for different activities, practice, bell work, whatever. So the first thing is you need to open an internet browser and get logged into Canvas. So you can either go to just wws.instructure.com if you have it bookmarked, or you can also go to the portal.wws.k12.in.us, and there's a link to Canvas there as well. And then once you get to the Canvas login page, log in just like you were adding something to your Canvas calendar or accessing your Canvas courses. As long as you haven't hidden anything within your course, the TestNav 8 should be available as a link in each of your courses. So once you log in, whether you have your courses on your dashboard or whether you have to go through your courses, we need to go through and check each course and make sure the TestNav 8 is available. So to make that happen, you're going to click on one of your courses. And over here on this sidebar where students have their quick links to files, pages, or whatever, one of them should be the TestNav 8. So if you don't see this TestNav 8 somewhere on your side page, then we need to make sure that we make that available to students in every course that you offer. So if you don't see it, to fix that, you need to go into your settings. So you'll click Settings. And then across the top, you'll see several different options. We want to be underneath the Navigation tab. And then you'll see a list at the top and then some instructions and a list below that. This top list is all the items that students can see. This bottom list are all pages that are disabled and that won't appear in navigation in the student view. So if your TestNav is down here in this bottom list, right, if you see it sitting down here, you need to drag it up here into the top list. Okay, you can even decide to rearrange these and have that TestNav sort of show up higher or lower or wherever you sort of want students to have access to it. Once you make sure that that TestNav is in there, okay, if you go back to the home page of your course, you should then see the TestNav 8 reappear. If you still aren't confident that it's there, you can always go over here on the right and go into the student view. If you click on student view, this will set up and show you exactly what the students see. So this is what my students have available to them. My TestNav is on the bottom left. Okay, once you're finished checking in the student view, then you can click to leave the student view. So I want you to pause this video and take a couple minutes and go through and check every single course that you have this trimester and make sure that the TestNav 8 is available in each and every course. Okay, now that we know that the TestNav 8 is available in each of these courses, I want to sort of show how we can use it as a great resource to help students become more familiar with the test, how they should be responding and answering questions. So for students to access the TestNav 8, once you have it available on your Canvas page, all you have to do is give instructions to log into Canvas, access your course, and then to just click on TestNav 8. When they click on TestNav 8, they'll get a window here. They'll need to click on the blue button that tells them to open it in a new tab. This takes us directly to the TestNav. So my students are so familiar with logging in, I just tell my students to open the TestNav. They know they're going to go right into Canvas and click that link. Once we're here, we have 4 different things that we have as resources. This second one down is English and writing prompts, so we're not going to look at that today. I want to start from the bottom. So the bottom one is an online tutorial. When you click on that, this is just a quick resource if you're not familiar with the test and familiar with what the students will see. right? There's arrows up here on the top that you can use to move forward and backwards throughout here. And it will just go through things that the students see and buttons they can use. I always think it's great that they give you instructions on how to use the back and next button up here after you need to already use it. But you can just sort of click through and see the exact formatting that students will see and how they actually interact with the software that they'll take their test in. I actually want to spend more time looking at this first option and the third option. So this first option at the top just gives you some practice questions so students can become familiar with sort of the technology-enhanced questions. The technology-enhanced questions involve graphing, they involve dragging and dropping, graphing on a number line. This isn't something necessarily that we can incorporate in our classroom with specific grading, but it does at least give students access to sort of see how they graph and what that looks like. Okay, there's one here with some multiple choice options where these are options that you can select more than one. So when we're thinking about grading and even what questions we offer, it's always good to be thinking about the fact that we should be offering multiple choice where they can select all options that apply. You have some number line, things where they're going to click and then drag and drop to get that on the number line. There's some more dragging and dropping with answering some different story problems with a graph. And then our last question, we have a open response, extended response is what they call it, where they'd be doing some more typing and explaining. And this is really where we need to focus on how we can grade in our class and have the right expectation in our class so that students are sort of thinking this critical thinking that they need to be doing every single time they're getting ready for their I-step. So we're going to leave this one. This is just a specific problem. If we exit out of this specific problem, this specific option, we can go then into our third one down, which is the equation editor. And the equation editor is going to offer that same look as that fourth problem, except give us some more freedom to type some things in. Where a question isn't provided, we can provide the question and have them enter their response here. This is a great opportunity to have conversation with your students just about how they should respond to open-ended questions by using words, numbers, symbols, whatever. Okay, this box allows them to type and show their work. And then over here on the right, they have sort of their math symbols that they can insert into the software. As we're looking towards thinking about grading, whether that be, it doesn't need to just be for a test. It can simply be grading homework, grading bell work, or even just the expectation of how we have conversation in class and what we're holding students accountable to. We want to make sure that we're always thinking about doing math and having a written explanation at the same time. So if students were asked to solve something like 2x plus 7 equals 23. Okay, they would need to be showing their work, and you'll kind of see as you use the software more, it's a little bit finicky. So even though I spaced over, you kind of have to type it first and then sort of move it where you want it. It's a little bit bizarre in where it will let you move and how it will let you move. So you can sort of play around with that. But students would need to not only show this work, they also might need to explain I subtract 7 from each side because subtraction is the inverse operation of addition. Right? They might then include that by subtracting 7 on each side, they're creating another equivalent equation. That's going to get into our math process standards, which are always asking students to be able to explain, justify, critique, and be able to talk about math using correct vocabulary. So even though, yes, we are teaching math, vocabulary is becoming even more important. So if you're having them do a written response, you want to make sure that you're not just saying, oh, I know what they meant, or that wording is close enough. We really want to make sure that they're choosing correct words and they're using their explanations correctly that are mathematically correct, not just sort of a vague description. Okay, so I want you to pause the video for a minute, and I want you to just sort of make sure you're familiar with entering things in the test nav. So if there's anything there that you need to address or work with, you can sort of figure that out as a team. So hopefully now we're familiar with entering things into the test nav and how we insert and type and make the math work. I just want to show you a few more resources that you might consider as you're either talking about what you want to incorporate, how you're going to talk about grading those, or just anything else that might be relevant to your assessments and or assignments that you're given. So a couple more resources that students have available. Over here on the right where it says exhibits, this is where students access their reference sheet. All of you should have received some laminated copies of this reference sheet that you should have available in your classroom. So as you're thinking about what formulas students might have access to or might not have access to, these are formulas that we should always assume students can have access to. If it's outside of that, especially if it's coming from an algebra standard, we would be assuming that they don't have access to it, and that would be something that they would need to memorize. Along the top, there's also the calculator that they have access to. It is the graphing calculator. Okay, so maybe just making it something that you can say to students that they can always have access to this graphing calculator when they're doing their homework at home, right? Just something that we would all agree across the board that they have access to and they know that they have this as a resource. And some other places where you can look to get an idea outside of the test nav are some released things from the IDOE. So in the shared folder that I shared with you in Google Docs with all the iStep info, I do have some of this included as well, but I just want to give you sort of the direct link. If you aren't sure how to access the IDOE iStep 10 info, you can always just Google the IDOE iStep 10, and the first link that comes up will take you directly to this page. And if you scroll down, there's some different things that we have access to. So there's some samplers that you can go through. This is all sort of the info that I sorted through and pulled the different tasks that you've had provided. But then there's also the released answers. This is a great resource to sort of get an idea of how should we grade and what specific details should we be looking for. Because here are some actual released answers and we can sort of see what objectives and what things they've been looking for on past tests. So I already had that open. You'll notice that this is 69 pages. However, it only covers like 4 released answers. It just gives it gives several pages of each type, whether it was an exemplary score or not. So here are some things to consider when we're talking about grading. If it's a constructed response answer, they're going to get 2 points for the content, but they're also going to get 2 points for the process. And the process, again, has to deal with, are they using the right vocabulary? Are they explaining? Are they justifying? Not just are they getting an answer of x equals 3, but can they explain where that came from? An extended response question, that then becomes a 6-point question. But again, half of those points are still coming from the process standards. Are they explaining? Are they justifying? Are they using correct vocabulary? Okay, so as we scroll down, you can then see sort of the rubric scores that they're looking for exactly, what will earn 1 point, what will earn 2 points. So as you're sort of talking about grading and how you want to look at grading some of those open-ended responses, you can see exactly what the iStep would be looking for their process score, right? Do they have a thorough understanding? Are they using an acceptable strategy? Finding those important elements and giving clear explanation and interpretations. Then same thing you can see sort of for the extended response. So definitely a conversation that you want to be talking about as you're grading those free response or open-ended questions. And then as you scroll down, you're going to get into pages and pages of the same question. It will show you the problem that they were asked to do. And then it will give you what those responses look like. If you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see exactly what that looks like typed into the test nav. So you'll see some problems that only require writing because it might just require an explanation. But if we keep scrolling, right, you'll see pages and pages for one problem. So you just have to kind of keep scrolling. As we get to question number 2, this requires some more math work, right? And so you can just sort of see the amount of detail they're asking these students to be typing into the test nav. And I can tell you right now that this takes practice for students to understand how to get this entered with this square root, covering the information that it should be, having the parentheses, so just making sure we're practicing that. And then also some written response answers and how that will look. Okay, but just some options of what they might be typing in. So it's definitely worth taking some time scrolling through and seeing what that means and how we talk about that. When we get down to question 3, we have some explanations with writing and math work. Again, depending on how they type it and write that in might be different of what they need to show and what words they need to type, right? How we might have some things together. You can sort of look through and see how those are all scored. And then when we get sort of to the final question, right, we have, again, we're talking about that it's slope, we're typing in words, we're typing in math, we're including fractions, right? We have everything sort of happening in one piece. So I just want to make sure we're taking some time today, to make sure everyone has access to the test nav available. If you don't have access to the test nav or can't get that figured out, please let me know. And I also want to make sure that we're spending time discussing how we're going to grade, thinking about these types of questions that we need to be making available for the students to be practicing on. Whether that be a homework assignment that we want to grade, a test question that we're going to include that requires some more critical thinking and how we're going to grade that. And just making sure we're keeping that idea that we don't only want to grade for content, but we also want to grade for the process as well.